This is part 2 of my Ganesha video. Again, Ganesha inspired me to do this video. Otherwise, I would not have done that. As I said that I've been trying to live out of time. The only way that I could deal with time is doing something like this. Just being tuned with the forces that are invisible, the ganas in this case, and Ganesha is the leader of the ganas, who are very intelligent beings who can do things that we cannot even conceive of. But anyway, the reason why I was inspired to do this video is after I did my morning oblation to the sun god, I was revealed a few things about the sacred nature of this day, which is Sunday here in San Diego. The sun, if you go to Kerala, they will tell you is very powerful during the month of Kritika, which is this month. And they don't want to miss the Kritika month, Sundays. And it has great significance, astronomically speaking, because during this month the sun directly shines on the Sagittarius, the sign Sagittarius, and it is also the center of the galactic. The Sag is very important, and so this time is the most powerful time. The December 21st is a very important day as far as the Sun and the Sag is concerned. So if you want to know more about the Sun and Sag, go to Google and find more information. I'm not so much interested in the science as I'm interested in what the Siddhas have to say. The Siddhas knew a lot more about the sun. So in this connection that I just remember what Socrates told Plato. Plato, in your academy, you can have every other science except astrology, because astrology, you can't handle it, because behind the celestial objects there are beings. So sun per se is not only a star but also a god, and that is the most important thing. That's what inspired me to do this video. The sun is a god, and he is, apart from what astronomy has to say about what physicists have to say about the sun, and the power it gets from nuclear fusion and of hydrogen atoms into helium. These are very powerful things that we are learning a great deal about energy and creating energy through nuclear fusion. The other day I was watching Scientific American video that say that we are very close to decades away from creating energy like the sun does, just by trying to understand how can it collide the hydrogen and then create new power source and helium and so forth. So I'm not going to go into that because I'm not a physicist or astrophysicist, but nuclear fusion is really something that the scientists are working on. And because what the nuclear fission that we know of is only to split the atom, and then that creates a lot of problems in creating nuclear waste and radiation and so forth. But uh, it is very important to understand the science of sun, not sun as a star and its energy dynamics and its and planets moving around it and what happens as they move along this around the sun. What is important is really what the Siddhas have to say. The Siddhas uh, are not in a body, so they are not restricted by any impurities. So they have pure knowledge, encyclopedic knowledge, and they recommend this and worship and the worship of gods and goddesses too. And all of the Siddhas worship Ganesha, and that's the most important thing. That's why in Mumbai, I think is quite preeminent, not because of Lakshmi there. It is also due to Lakshmi, but primarily because of Ganesha. Because Ganesha rules Mumbai. So I want to come back to what I said in my previous video. Ganesha is a god. He's a phenomenon. He's not just a character of in a mythology. So mythology has to be understood as in its ontological sense of being alive, and then you can contact him. And then the Durva grass or the Bermuda grass, which I said is the vehicle through which you can contact him, and then he is the source of intelligence and power. Because if you go to the story of the Durva grass itself, nobody could control negative forces, personified in the mythology of Analasu, and Ganesha came and swallowed him, and nobody could, contain uh, the pain generated by Analasu in terms of excessive heat in the body of Ganesha, and what could help uh, instantaneously was the Durva grass. That's why I told in my people in the lab to go and identify the molecule in Durva grass, and that would be the one that can save us from a lot of ailments. So I take it seriously. Personally, Durva grass is not, Ganesha is not a myth, a dead myth, but an active myth, both transcendental and immanent in nature. That's very important. He is transcendental, what you can understand is only a little bit about him, but then uh, he is also something you cannot even understand, because human understanding is conditioned by linguistic media. Through only language, they understand everything. That as long as that constraint is there, we are not going to understand anything that is beyond language. That's why in Shiva Sutra, Shiva said to Vasugupta, Jnanam Bandha, knowledge is the beginning of it. I translate it as knowledge. The literal translation is knowledge is bondage, but I translate it as knowledge is the beginning of ignorance. So we have to get beyond language and keep quiet, and then go to the origin of language in matrikas, letters. because and the letters carry intelligence. Again, Shiva Sutra says, Jnana Adhishthanam Matrikaha. Where is intelligence coming from? It is coming from syllables. And there's one syllable that mm, is the Mula Mantra, the Mula Bija for Ganesha is Gha, Gum, Gung, either Gung or Gum. And because the Ka series or Kakara is the beginning of the material existence. In this way, that I can think of Ganesha as the boson, which the scientists are now calling boson as the God particle. That's why the Siddhas never ever do anything without going and taking the permission of Ganesha to do that, because he is going to guide you through. It is not a ritual that you go to him. So everything that I see uh, in the practice and of Hinduism uh, is based on science. Even if you offer, say, I started out with this oblation of sun, when you offer water, which is hydrogen, you know, H2O, and then you are really connecting with the sun through hydrogen, and then he in turn is going to give you an understanding of hydrogen, because hydrogen is God, hydrogen is life. There is a book called Hydrogen is God, and by I think Judy Beebe, she channeled this message, and then there's a lot of science to it also. Uh, Now they are trying to get a water which is HHO instead of H2O, which was called as God water. It all makes sense to me. So just giving water to God itself is a scientific practice. And the Puranas have to be revisited. The Puranas have to be revisited with an understanding that they are scientific facts, and modern science is going to help us a lot in this venture. Uh, so, if you just, for instance, introduce Ganesha and talking about one economo neuron and highest intelligence hippocampus, and then people will be able to relate to uh, Ganesha, or even introduce the concept of ganas, and he being the lord of the ganas, and there are invisible forces, and there are specific ways and means through which you can contact them, and that will do a lot to revive. I think the Hinduism is down the road is going to stand uh, and will only on the basis of its permanent value, which is science. It is pure science, science of the highest kind. Um, uh, Everything that you do, including I just remember one thing that I just read from Agastya. My information mostly come from Agastya. Agastya said that you have to manufacture vibhuti, the bhasma, the sacred ash, through the cow dung or cow crap, and you have to raise this cow in a certain way, that you have to feed the cow only with the Durva grass, and then it goes through the body of the cow, which carries all the deities, and then the cow waste uh, uh, will have the power of the Durva grass, They will be empowered, and that uh, Bhasma is the most important one. This, I think, the Indian government and Indian entrepreneurs should consider uh, uh, starting universities um, uh, which will just directly go and apply science and technology uh, to unravel the Puranas. That's why I'm interested in Devdutt, because he's doing only to highlight it from a mundane point of view, mostly. Uh, I'm sure that he is aware of the spiritual dimension of the mythology. But then this is a great beginning, because what we need to do is we want the entrepreneurs uh, to get interested in what is sometimes called as superstition, which is not superstition. Particularly, the image worship has been called a superstition, and the rituals are why you go and waste so much of milk, particularly in the southern India. I think it's the case in northern India too, to pour so much milk over a deity in the name of Abhishekam. It's a waste, and this milk can be given to the poor people. But you have to understand that the milk, the significance of the milk, and which is the blood of cow, and the blood symbolism is can be understood not only in the light of Hinduism but in Judaism. And if you go to the book of Leviticus, which Moses received directly from God, or Jesus' life itself, where his blood becomes a great symbol for renewal and sacrifice. And to go back to the ritual of Abhishekam, I call it as hydration ritual. Hydration, hydrogen is life, I just said a few minutes ago. Hydrogen is God, hydrogen is life. That's how do you give life to the people? It is only through infusing hydrogen uh, to the object that we want to come to live life. So, hydrogen is the most important gas that can mm, give life, and it is God, and it is life. So we are, whenever we are going to another planet, what we are looking for is there is hydrogen in it. So the when you look at this from this point of view, from a scientific point of view, everything makes sense. Gayatri makes sense. And three times worshipping the sun in morning, mid sun, and setting sun, which is a Vedic practice, is tremendously important when you understand this, the sun as the source of all our life, all our energy, and then the sun carries the technology of nuclear fusion, of fusing the two hydrogen atoms in the background of an extreme heat to collide and create helium. And so that is the sun god can give you this nuclear power. So everything that we do uh, has to be understood in the light of in, a spiritual practice or practices in the temple have to be, or rather mythology, stories have to be understood in uh, in terms of modern science, because modern science is very precise. So why am I asking people to go and identify the molecule of Durva grass, the Bermuda grass? Because only when you go deep into the subtlest levels of nature, you can understand the origin. Now, why are we spending so much money into the boson discovery of the boson particle? Billions of dollars have been spent already because they want to find out the origin of matter. And then the origin is always is very, very, very subtle. When it becomes gross matter, then there is no power. That's why a compound, element, atom, and subatomic particles. When you look at this as a phenomenon, so when you go deeper into atomic particles, they are much more powerful than an atom. So we are going deep inside to understand understand the nature of power and energy and knowledge, of course. So it is that's why the yogis are into nadhanta, the end of sound. The end of sound is, again, the end of sound is a concept which has to be understood in light of quantum physics. The quantum physics, the modern theory, is what is called the string theory. Everything originated from what is called the strings. The strings is a sound wave. You know. So the sound waves is to me the nada, and beyond they even went beyond it to nadhanta, the end of nada. So nada is what gives us. No, what I am talking to you is also a nada because I'm talking to you. I use sound, and the sound as a means of communication. And if I don't use the nada at a gross level, and so that you can hear through your ears and understand, and, then no communication takes place. But then there is another communication takes place when we go to the origin of nada. Where does the nada, the sound, where does the sound is originating? The sound is originating, at a very, very subtle level within our own consciousness. The words and sentences do not come, from, they do come from a very, very superficial surface level. But the sentences can be broken down into words, and the words will be broken down into letters or syllables. And these syllables are the building blocks of intelligence. That's why I say this S equals I, which means sound is equals intelligence. This is a Siddha concept, and also in the Vedas too. That's why the sounds create matter. The sounds create intelligence. The research that I am doing with the Harvard Medical School to map the brain and find the signature of certain sounds in the brain is very important for me. And so once the results are known through the fMRI studies, we will be able to know that through sounds we can tap into the highest intelligence. And through the highest intelligence, we will be able to understand better. So now, what we are conditioned by only linguistic understanding, by logic. And there is another learning, and that learning comes from this sound. Say Om, for instance. Om is God. That's Patanjali, who is the father of yoga. Although he did not believe the way you and I would believe about gods and goddesses, he's more like on the scientific side. And even though he is not into mythology and so forth, he himself say accepts God, Ishvara. He says God, Om is God. Om is God. And it's very interesting. Eben Alexander, and I had a show, I shared a show with him. I invited him as a guest in my show. Ben Alexander is a Harvard neuroscientist who went into a coma and then visited heaven, and then he wrote a book called The Proof of Heaven, which became a bestseller. And I privately talked to him prior to the call, and I asked him, how did he know that Om is God? He said, I don't know. So that's what I was told when I was in heaven. Because he grew up as a Christian, but again, not a you know, arduous Christian, but one who goes only to the church during Christmas or something. But he himself had said very clearly in his book that Om, the sound. So everything originated from the Shabda, which is in. So that's why it's called Shabda Prapanja. Prapanja, the world is made up of sounds. And the sounds are not just audible sounds, but they are inaudible. They go to very, very subtle levels, and they are the origins of the universe. So it's important that we pay attention to the Puranas. If we look at the 18 Puranas, there are so many Puranas, not only 18 Puranas, they are all going to give us a clue to understand the nature of the universe, the nature of our intelligence, and then that will help us to evolve faster. But they have to go hand in hand because I truly believe in the Einstein model, which says that science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind. Of course, I don't want to go and follow anything blindly. It has to be proved, and science helps it. But science again is handicapped without religion, which understands physics in a better way than material physics does. So we are living in a very exciting time, and uh, this is a video that I could do with all my heart, and then particularly to inspire young people, to inspire educationists uh, and scientists. And this is the way to go to evolve ourselves, to evolve our sciences, to have a better life for the human race. God bless. Om Gam Ganesha.